and I'm super excited to welcome on stage Scott Gardner, Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Siemens Digital Industries. Welcome, Scott. Thank you for being here, Scott. I know you flew all the way from London just for this event, just for today. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate that. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and about your
Yeah, sure. So I'm leading sales in Siemens Digital Industries. That's the part of Siemens that combines all the simulation and the digital with the real world of doing things. So simulation and everything you see in Formula One cars and fluid dynamics, we do all of that. And I've been doing that for 4 years now, but I've got 124 quarters in sales. I was working the maths out backstage, and which is why my hair is quite as grey as it is. I've also got a funny accent, as you can hear, from the UK, but it's really, in doing my role, what do I do? And it's ultimately about building high-performance teams in sales. That's ultimately what it's about. When you're running a big sales organization, you can't do everything yourself. It's actually how do you enable the teams, how do you activate the teams. And every day, it's about building the team's capability to take the vast portfolio that Siemens has and solve their problems and make their world better. And if we can get our sellers to be able to tell the story of what our technology does, actually, we really help our customers achieve their goals. And that's when we both win.
Awesome. So Siemens launched a global forecasting initiative recently. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the problems that you were trying to solve?
Sure. I mean, we're a big company. You heard that. 190 countries, 300,000 employees overall. There's only 195 countries in the United Nations. So just give you an idea of the kind of number of countries we actually operate in. But we're an old company. We're nearly 180 years old. So you built old companies in a different way. You built them on multiple P&L structures, different countries, different CEOs. So you end up with kind of a broad range of processes out there. What we wanted to do was be able to pull together all of our insights to our business, particularly around what is the forecast, what does our future look like? There's a lot going on in the world right now, if nobody's noticed. How do we get better insight to that and what it means to us and how our customers are performing and how our sellers are supporting them? So we started looking at our forecasting. We wanted consistent, transparent, simple forecasting processes right across that landscape, bring it together and make it more efficient and simpler for our businesses and our board and our sellers to understand what's going on.
That's awesome. And Scott has a very interesting story of why outreach. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, I actually came to this show 2 years ago, and it was great to be here. But we were talking at the time about Engage. We were using Engage. I gave a short presentation about how we were starting to roll out that globally for Siemens. And in one of the side discussions, I got talking with one of your product managers, and I think it was one of your first meetings.
It was my first meeting. It was my first Unleash, and I was there in the meeting with you as well. I still remember that.
And we got talking about forecasting, and your product leader said to us, he said, hey, look, and we're going to call this forecasting product Commit. And it was like a switch going on, because for me, that is the heart of sales forecasting. The commitment from the individual seller to the first line manager, to the regional manager, all the way up through the countries to the organization. What is sales going to deliver to the business reliably and transparently? And it's an emotional thing. It's a commit, and it has to be personal. And I just love that name. And we started diving right into exactly what you guys were doing.
You did. He really dug quite deep, actually. I still remember 2 years ago. I still remember that meeting. Now, tell us a little bit about how has outreach transformed Siemens Digital Industries?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken quite a strategic approach with outreach, because it is for us that business consistency. When you're such a broad-based company, you have to really think about what are the things that make us common? How do we drive that consistency? We spent a lot of time cleaning up our data. We still have work to do on the change management. Your team on the support side and the professional services were awesome.
Thank you for that.
Rolling out in that many countries is not straightforward, and you gave us fantastic support. But we can already see really clear impact. Forecast in particular gives us very real-time access to how we think the business is performing, and that's a level of transparency that we haven't had before. And because you heard in the very first presentation earlier, how you roll up, how you do that without hundreds of people sharing spreadsheets. It's just a commit. It's a submit. You press the button, it rolls up, it's instant. We can move from monthly forecasting to weekly forecasting, and actually we can even go sub-weekly if we wish to look at how we're performing at a quarter end, to know whether we need to go a bit faster. I mean, I sometimes say forecasting is, if you get it right,
yeah.
It's a bit like the drummer at the back of the boat.
That's
drumming. When we need to drum a bit faster and everybody needs to row a bit harder, we can do that with the process. And that's why the process matters, not just from a tooling perspective, but also the cultural change it drives.
Yeah. And you were sharing with me some of your feedback from your different teams.
The teams actually love it, and I think partly because you mentioned earlier, simple, right? If you've got to make the seller's life easy, you've got to make their life easy to be working with the tooling. And actually, I love the first one on this. It's Italy. If any of you have ever worked in Italy, people are very passionate. They're very entrepreneurial. Data quality isn't normally their highest priority. So to have really strong data quality coming in from our Italian team, who are an amazing sales team, is part of what we see of people just adopting, loving the tooling, loving being able to work with it. And I think that's a great example. We've gone in Belgium to really starting to use the Seller Hub more effectively, piloting care there. And the teams are really understanding what they can do with it and understand how they drive our business. Big, broad locations like Canada, it's a really big place. There are people right across that organization, right across that country, but actually having a very consistent process, no matter whether you are at one end of 3,000 miles, you're up in the very north where it doesn't get light for very long or very dark for very long, depending on the time of the year, or right out to the other side, and having that pipeline visibility in a highly consistent way. And then even in our smaller countries like South Africa and Brazil, where you get more accuracy, you get simplicity. And I think ultimately that really helps us. And even at the board level now, Siemens board level, people are interested in the transparency that we're providing out of the outreach forecasting system because it becomes very available, very obvious, and very real time.
I mean, there you go. The amount of changes, the complexity of changes, and the speed with which this team, Scott and his team, they're sitting right here with Thorsten and others, they did this transformation was just amazing. And so what advice would you have, Scott, for others in the audience who may be trying to do something similar to what you have done at Siemens?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started November the 24th last year. We've rolled out 4,000 sellers in 190 countries. We've got about another 4,000 to go. We're doing complicated countries in Asia as well. And I think that speed of getting the process in is really helping us. It helps us drive the true transparency. But I think three things I would leave you with is one, and it's come up time and time again already in the presentations, keep it simple, right? That one complete enterprise-grade platform, that one place where the sellers live, that is easy for them to use, that gives them the information that they need, that doesn't bombard them with distractive stuff that they just don't need to know about. That is core to how we've driven the speed. Even countries that were perhaps took some persuading that we wanted to introduce forecasting to them on a standardized methodology are now loving that process because they can see how it lets them really drive that drumbeat in their business and be more effective. So that complete enterprise-grade platform, I think, is important. I think from a business perspective, we care about predictable revenue. We talked about it last night. I mean, we have more than 200 factories. We make real things, right? Forecasting matters to your profitability because if your factories are empty, they are very expensive. If they are too full, your customers are dissatisfied. Being able to manage the product, the performance point of your factories is an important point of our forecasting. It's not like software, we can't just produce another one. We actually have to physically manufacture it. So predictable revenue, particularly on the hardware side, is key to us. And I think everybody loves that. But I think one last, and the point I'm going to make about that is just drive that visibility. Because in driving the visibility through the organization, not just installing the process, actually people buy in because it suddenly becomes very real to all the parts of the business what it means to them to have this kind of process. And then the last point is one of I touched on before. It's ultimately about people. Sales is a people business. Marketing is a people business. Yes, there's AI, there's data, but it's all pulling on us as humans. And I would say to you, the culture you drive, that culture of commitment and the culture of delivering on what you said you would do is core. And so I would say, when you think about forecasting, think culture, because the name commit says it all. And that's one of the reasons we started this journey. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. Big round of applause. Thank you very much.